Morning.
Morning, Eric. Looks like
Top
we're
of the
all,
morning. How's everybody feeling?
Yeah, feel a little bit of the heat.
Man, no kidding. I bet your tomatoes are doing good though, David.
They've kind of sprung along since the heat came on. I've got one section of the plants are probably almost 4.5 foot tall now, and
Wow.
got some corn in the ground and a couple watermelon plants, and that so it's all kind of just hitting its growth spurt.
Good.
Nice.
okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I think, is Melissa going to join us, or is it,
Good morning, everybody. This is Melissa. Sorry, we were getting everything turned on. I apologize, but we are ready to go.
thank you, Melissa. And is Corey available? Is he around?
Good morning, Barbara. It's Michaela today.
And
Hi,
Corey is
Michaela.
on.
Hi.
Great, good. This is good. It's good we have some redundancy in the system. Okay, great. Welcome, Michaela. Good.
And Barbara,
All right. Yeah.
this is Lisa. For some reason, I can't get my video on. I'll try re-entering the meeting, but I may be without video today.
Okay. All right. Thanks for letting us know then. All right. So, all right. And I think we've got some public here. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the June 3rd, 2021 special board meeting. We're going to have a couple presentations today, but before we begin, I'd like to call the meeting to order and ask Melissa to please do the roll call.
Okay. Director Balin,
Here.
Director Boatwright,
Here.
Director Kearns,
Here.
Director Murphy.
She stepped out. She'll be right back.
Okay, she stepped out for a second. Director Regan.
Here.
Okay, and Director Murphy is here. I think
She's logging back on.
she's logging back on, so we'll give her just a second.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Lisa, can you hear us now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Everything's working, but the start video button doesn't do anything. So I
Okay,
will be
So,
just a picture on the screen.
cool. So Melissa, can you continue with the roll call, please?
Okay, and Director Murphy.
Here.
Okay, all 5 directors are present.
Great, thank you. All right, so let's see. So Michaela's here. Michaela, would you please put the flag up, and then I'll lead us in the pledge.
Yes, 1 second, Barbara.
We'll just have to do it. Just have to do it that way.
I think, oh, great. I pledge
All right,
allegiance to
Barbara,
the
thanks for
flag.
trying to master this.
Okay. Well, it gave me some time to think of my mom. She was a WAC, and she always instilled a sense of duty in her children. So, and I'm sure we all have loved ones or have served ourselves. So it's good to think of that while we waited to get the flag up here. Okay, so I'll begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and
liberty
justice for
and
all.
justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Michaela. So at this point, I'd like to welcome the public who's taken the time to join us and provide comments on matters related to the district business. Any member of the public may address the board relating to any matter within the board's jurisdiction. This need not be related to any item on the agenda. However, the board cannot act on an item unless it was noticed on the agenda. Persons speaking during the public comment will be limited to 5 minutes, or depending on the number of persons wishing to speak, it may be reduced to allow all members of the public the opportunity to address the board. So Michaela, at this time, is there any member of the public that would like to address us on matters not relating to our agenda today?
I don't see any right now, Barbara. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So with that, I'll close the public comment, the public forum, and we will go to regular business. And Melissa, would you like to introduce the first item that we have for discussion?
Okay, item number 1, introduction and discussion of the fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan.
Okay, good morning, everybody. President Balin and TUD directors, Don Perkins, your operations director. Eric Johnson and I are going to team up and introduce the proposed fiscal year 22 CIP plan. Both this slideshow and the one Steve has prepared after this one is a total of 29 slides, so it shouldn't be too bad. We should be able to get through it pretty quick. There's an awful lot of work that goes into preparing this CIP plan. It basically lasts all year long. From the time we close this one and adopt this one, we'll quickly begin working on the next year, fiscal year 23. We spent all year working on it, and come around March, we really focus in and trying to get it ready for this proposal. All of us here at the district had some input into this from the engineering department all the way through operations, all the superintendents and foremen. Everybody has their opportunity to weigh in on these projects. All of these proposed projects fit into a category of either imminent failure, regulatory mandate, improved reliability or efficiencies, motivated by grant opportunities, or county-driven projects. So Director Balin, I have a question for you as we go through, and Eric is going to drive the presentation for us, but Director Balin, I have a question for you. For us, we have 16 slides. Would you like us to go through all 16 slides and have questions later, or as we go?
I think as we go, otherwise we get on kind of information overload. If that's okay, and maybe I can ask the other directors to, be mindful of staying on message, and so that we can, so it won't be noon before Eric starts his. So we just need to all be mindful. But I think if we ask questions as we go, it might help clarify it to the board. If that's okay with the other members. You guys okay with all that? Okay, good.
Okay, Eric,
Okay.
can you?
Thanks for asking, Don.
You're welcome.
Very good. Don, is that my cue to start the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and get this started here. Just bear with me a moment. I'm hoping that everyone is seeing the slide presentation, not in presenter view, but hopefully it's filling your screen. Let me know if it is not.
It's in presenter.
Yes, it is.
Okay, very good. How's that look?
Perfect.
All right, very good. Well,
Okay.
Dawn, take it away.
Okay. Get my notes back out here. Okay, so once again, this is our proposed fiscal year 22 capital improvement plan. Next slide. You've seen this, most of you have seen this before, the definition of a capital improvement plan, usually a short range plan, 4 to 10 years, which identifies capital projects and equipment purchases, provides a planning schedule and identifies options for financing the plan. For us, our capital projects are usually greater than $50,000. Again, just I tend to go a little quick, so if you have a question, just barge in. So this is a snapshot of our 5-year CIP. You're only seeing what is proposed for fiscal year 22. Some of these projects were started in previous years, and some of these projects are beginning in this year and conclude in succeeding years, like fiscal year 23, perhaps. We'll highlight some of these projects, but if you want to talk about any of these other projects that we don't highlight, we can come back to this slide. Over on the right hand of this slide, you'll see other currently unfunded projects. These are highly desirable projects we really would like to get to, and if we can find some funding for it, and we are actively looking for funds for these projects right now. Unfortunately, at least on my screen, you can't see the dollar amounts. Can you all see the dollar amounts on your screens? Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
On the unfunded, yes.
Right. Okay. So it's many millions of dollars of unfunded projects, although they're highly desirable to complete if we can find funds. And again, we are actively searching for grant opportunities or other funding sources to get those projects completed. Next slide, Eric, please. So the Phoenix Dam and spillway improvements, this is an example of a regulatory mandate by the Division of Safety of Dams. This, if you were to look at last year's or 2 years ago's CIP, you wouldn't have seen this on here. It wasn't a high priority. We knew this needed to be done. We just didn't have it as the highest priority. Well, the Division of Safety of Dams had different thought on that, and so we've had to move it up. And so we plan on doing that this coming fiscal year. Be funded out of our ratepayers. The contractor has been selected, Sierra Mountain Construction Incorporated. And I think there's a couple of more slides with other pictures. Yeah, concrete spalling on the spillway, and then erosion on an earthen dam. These are the things that are going to be addressed in the improvements. Sonora water treatment plant improvements. This too was not on our most to-do list, because we had hoped by now we'd be a little further down the road with a new Sonora water treatment plant. But the age of this plant and the condition of some of the critical components have just forced our hand here to seriously address this plant in the very near future. In fact, at a previous water committee meeting, we addressed this a little bit, and at an upcoming full board meeting, we're going to address it again and propose an assessment from an outside contractor to help us guide us through what upgrades we can do to ensure the efficiency and reliability of this treatment plant. Currently, we're already in the midst of phase 1, which is to bypass that Clearwater Reservoir. If you can see that, I don't know if Eric can highlight that with a highlighter or not, but this structure right here is nearly, well, it is right at 100 years old. Well, not quite, just about 100 years old. That cover on there is nearly 40 some years old. and it's just deteriorating on the outside, and the concrete bottom is also deteriorating, and it's just a sanitary hazard. So we're currently constructing a bypass around that Clearwater Reservoir to the existing clear well. So that's phase one. Phase two and phase three, if there's a phase three, is unknown, and we'll know more in the coming months. We've budgeted, $750,000. That was just a placeholder. We just won't know until we get through this condition assessment of just exactly what the upgrades are going to cost. Here's a couple more pictures, aerial pictures from drone or Google Earth pictures. On the right-hand side, down below the Clearwater Reservoir we're talking about is the newer Clearwell. I say new, it's new to me because I remember a day when that didn't exist, but it is too nearly 20 years old, and it's going to be need interior and exterior rehab in the near future.
David Boatwright has his hand raised.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Director Boatwright.
Oh, that's all right. Just a quick question. If you're taking that clear well offline, is it for repair, or is it going offline, indefinitely? And will that impact, clear water storage?
Yeah, so that's about 1.5 million gallons of stored water. It acts just as a buffering tank. It acts really as a giant day tank for the clear well. So the water by gravity flows out of that Clearwater Reservoir down to a booster station pump, and then pumps up to that clear well, the clear well. So what is its future? It's to be determined. My gut instinct is that it'll be out of service permanently. Whether it's replaced with a new tank, so we have a dual tank system there, I'm not sure. Whether it could be repurposed as a sludge holding area because that's in dire need, just not sure what its future is.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Here's some more components that are in dire needs of upgrades. On the left-hand side, you're looking at a motor control center and variable speed drives, which operate and drive the large pumps that are outside of this picture. They drive the pumps from the said basin through the filters and up to the Clearwater Reservoir. On the right-hand side are the controls. These are some outdated controls, early 70s vintage. Much of this is 10 to 15 years older than anybody at the treatment plant has been around. So anyway, these are some of the components that we're really struggling with. We count on these controls to operate this plant, night and day while we are not there. And if any time any of those sequences get out of whack, it causes all kinds of fits. As of late, the last couple of years, we have showed up at the plant not knowing anything was wrong, and then find out that somehow the plant shut down and we can't figure out why. And it takes a big reboot to get the plant going. So we really do struggle with the reliability of this sequence of events. So we're going to bring in some experts and give us some help on how to get to improve this system. Any questions on that?
Okay, I think Don wanted me to take this one. The board's very aware of the Sierra Pines Regional Water Treatment Facility project. Over the course of the last few years, we finalized the treated water system optimization planning document. We engaged Carollo engineers to do preliminary design and give us an initial cost estimate. The board then authorized the hiring of a wetland biologist to do a wetland delineation. The board also engaged Environmental Science Associates, ESA for short, to do the CEQA document, which the board adopted in April. And really the next step, which you see here in the fiscal year 22 proposed capital budget, is a $75,000 expenditure to further efforts to secure the permits for the project. Once we've gone that far, I think this is really the logical last step before big dollars would need to be spent. And so your staff will be looking at trying to secure grants and low interest loans through USDA or through the state Department of Water Resources and the State Water Board, because the design phase probably is $1 million effort. And then of course the construction, as you can see here, is somewhere in the $30 million plus range. And we obviously do not have that programmed into our capital budget. So we're just asking the board to consider the next step, which is permitting. And once we have all that in line, there's no reason that we wouldn't be a very eligible and competitive grant project in the eyes of the federal government and the state. If there aren't any questions, I'll advance to the next one. The Ridgewood transmission line to consolidate Scenic View and Phoenix Lake water systems. Again, another critical project identified in the treated water system optimization plan. If you speak with operations staff, this is one of the most important projects in this upcoming capital budget. What it would allow us to do is bring, I'm sorry, I don't have a map here, but to orient everyone, we would be tying into a pipeline that's on Ridgewood Drive, bringing that down to Phoenix Lake Road, and then extending that pipeline along Phoenix Lake Road all the way to Summit Drive, and actually all the way to Scenic Brook, Meadowbrook Drive area. That would allow us to connect to the Phoenix Lake Park water system. As you can see, there's a picture of the treatment facility there on the bottom. We would love to be able to demolish, abandon that tank and that filter system there and get the residents there on Upper Basin Crystal Falls water. And then also the Scenic View water treatment plant, it is constrained in being able to do additional improvements at that site because the area is so small and it's bounded by Sullivan Creek. Just off the view of the picture there, it's basically a canyon behind that site, and then the road in the foreground. And that facility staff has done just a fantastic job managing and operating, but it's long past overdue to eliminate that. And then also there are a few pump facilities we would be able to abandon and serve via gravity. So this is a multi-year, multi-phase project, not multi-year, we could do it in 1 year, I should say, but it would bridge over the fiscal year 22 and 23 years, fiscal years. Director Rainey.
Director Rain.
So, quick question here. Is there any credits that might be given to TUD that might result in or help obtain the grant monies and so on that you folks are going to be beating the bushes for, that has to do with savings, greenhouse gas, that sort of thing? Because everything you talked about from Sierra Pines is going to be gravity, and pretty much all of it, and this project here is gravity.
The answer is yes. Some of the State Water Board's latest funding has a component of the funding comes from the greenhouse gas emissions, like cap and trade system. So they're taking some of the funding out of that program to finance water and wastewater infrastructure that results in greenhouse gas emission reduction. So your staff is looking at that. In addition, there is what we call a consolidation incentive. So if this board executes a funding agreement to consolidate, for instance, the Curtis Creek Elementary School, which is by definition a disadvantaged community because the state considers schools and the children that attend as disadvantaged, they can't earn income. the state will give us, we've calculated somewhere in the $1.6 to $1.8 million incentive grant to be used on any other project. And so your board would be able to take those funds and apply it to this project or another project on the capital schedule, as long as we've submitted the paperwork to the state in advance to get this project reserved. And Michaela has done that for a number of projects. So we're positioning ourselves to be able to use some grant funding for this if it materializes.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I can't see everyone, so if there is a question and I'm not seeing you raise your hand, I apologize. Someone just let me know. The next project is the Crystal Falls Techite pipeline replacement. I should be very clear that the board authorized award of this contract a few weeks ago to a local contractor, Moyle Excavation. And so what we're asking for is to take what the board's already basically awarded and hard coded into this upcoming fiscal year 22 capital budget, which is $688,000. I should say though that is phase 2. The board's already and staff have already completed phase 1. So there will be a subsequent phase 3, and then the district would be rid of the Techite pipeline, which is a deficient, inadequate pipeline material that water agencies up and down the Sierra foothills have been working hard to get rid of. And so this particular phase here will go from the Comstock tank in Comstock Ranch area down to Lazy Z Lane. And it will also position us to take water from Sierra Pines back up towards the Crystal Falls water treatment plant site to consolidate that in the future once there's a Sierra Pines water treatment plant. This will save operations staff a lot of time in dealing with these chronic ruptures. As you can see, this pipe is very brittle, and then when it does break, it's not a little leak, it's a pretty large volume, and that comes out and it does a lot of damage. So not only are we replacing the pipeline or fixing the pipeline, we're doing a lot of cleanup work.
Go ahead, Director Balin.
Yeah. So I'm looking at our last year's plan and following along, because I kind of want to see what, if we're on track, I guess, and things that got completed or things that we're in the middle of, because some things are, like you said, multiple year. Question on this one. Okay. So it is project 016504. So there's the picture that you're showing too. And my question is, okay, it started in fiscal year 21, and then in this document, last year's document, it's expected to be completed in 25. Are you guys expecting to complete it, or at least phase 2? In ahead of schedule? Is that how I'm reading this?
I think I can take this, Eric. So, yeah, good idea to pull up that document and follow along. That's a great idea. So if I have this right, we've already completed phase 1. We just completed that last construction season. Feels like yesterday, but it's been a little while. We're about to complete phase 2. Phase 3 is down the road. I think it may still say fiscal year 25, but depending on priorities and opportunities, it may move up or it may move back. But I think we're still on target to do it in fiscal year 25, if that's correct, Eric.
I think so, and thank you, Director Balin. That's a great idea to follow along there. We've been focused on updating the 5-year on a year-to-year basis, and as we reprioritize, it then shifts, years 2 through 5 out. And I think we're still on track to, because it is a big expenditure to do it by fiscal year 25. But we'll come back to the board this time next year, and we may have moved it up in the schedule depending on priorities, like as Don had mentioned.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Go ahead, Director Boatright.
Yes. Okay.
So in phase 1 and 2 of this project, does that cover the majority of the area where we've had the catastrophic failures of this pipeline?
That's a great question. In my mind, the way I remember, yes. The phase 1, if you're familiar with the area, was the pipeline that runs from the Crystal Falls water treatment plant down to the Comstock tank area. What was challenging about, and yes, it ruptured many times over my career. In fact, on the eve of a annual main canal outage, it ruptured one time and left us stranded. So yes, that for sure is a major one. And this phase 2 is another major one. I know in my time, I can recall 3 or 4 instances where that has ruptured in the middle of the night, destroys people's property, and our crews are out better than 12 hours, especially when you consider cleanup. So yes, I believe these first 2 phases are the highest priorities of all of the phases.
All right, thank you.
Director Balin.
Yeah, only because I saw the next slide, and before we move on to the sewer projects, I just wanted to see if I'm tracking with the accomplishments for this year. And of the water fund projects, there are 39. Some of them won't be accomplished till, like we talked about, 2025, but some of them, for an example, Cedar Ridge upper tank land acquisition, and the new 60,000 gallon tank. Can you guys, without going project by project for the ones that were expected to be accomplished this year, just answer simply, are we on track for what we completed for this year?
Yes, I think I can do this for you. So I'm I found my book too that you have, Director Balin. So
Okay.
do you want me to start with the raw water fund and move on down the list?
Yeah, it would be really helpful, so that we know what's going to be dropped off the list and what's going to be added, because this is a rolling document, and so that would be helpful. Yes. Let me ask the group. Would that be helpful to my fellow directors?
Director Ringen will have a question after this one.
Okay. Am I getting I'm not getting any opposition. So if it's not going to be too much trouble, I think it would be very helpful to kind of see how we're doing, how our driving is for 2021, and what the district is successfully neared to completion, or you could say, yeah, we got that off our plate. We're ready for new projects.
Okay. Director Ringen did have a question real quick, and then I'll go through that.
Okay.
Yeah, President Balin beat me to the punch. I was gonna ask for that call out at the end of the presentation, but in the interest of time, because it's information that I think we all should know. I know I definitely wanted to know that. That was the very same exact question I had. But in the interest of time, is it possible for staff to color code each line, like green would be completed, orange would be, or red would be what's going to be done this year, And then for the future would be some other color, and then email that out to us so that we can update our, because I too have the book here in front of me and was following along, and that was my big question too, is what's been done, what's going to get done, and what's still in the planning stages or down the road. Thank you.
Okay. Director Balin?
Yes, thank you. I think in the interest of time, what would be very helpful is to actually have that when we get our new updated version, to have the color code in the list so that we can see at a glance what Director Ringen said, which ones got already accomplished, which ones we're still tracking, maybe which ones are red for postponement. I know I'm repeating Director Ringen, but maybe in the interest of time, that would be something that then we can begin to compare these documents and track our progress every year. So I think that's a great idea. And if we want to do it that way, then I'll sort of withdraw going over them now, if that would expedite things, or if we have room at the end, we can go over some of the 2021 accomplishments.
Right. Okay.
Okay.
A great suggestion. Thank you both for that suggestion. We'll make note of it and get that prepared for you as quickly as possible. But just sort maybe to kind of circle around the overall answer, if I can get it all right. And Eric, please help me if I don't. But you know, this is Steve Sheffield often says this is a point in time. This is our best laid plan. This is what we intend to do in the next 12 months or the next 5 years, if we're looking at a 5-year CIP. Oftentimes, we've learned there are all kinds of things that come up, such as a severe drought in 2014 and 15, where we had to set down some projects we had planned to work on drought mitigation efforts for failing wells and things of that nature. Sometimes land acquisition takes a lot longer than we want it to. So sometimes they don't get done in time. So, but yeah, we'll circle back and provide that for you for sure. All right. Let's go.
Ready for the next slide?
I am. I lost my notes here. Go ahead. So here is, again, a snapshot of the sewer, the draft fiscal year 22 sewer CIP. And it's a much shorter list with some highlights in there. Specifically, the Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility at a whopping $5.5 million. That's a large expenditure for the sewer. Typically, over the years, we allot for about $5 million in water and $2 million in sewer. So this 7.7 in sewer is quite a large number, but the majority of that is in the Sonora. We'll be talking about that in the coming moments. Next slide, please. Here's a great example of an efficiency and a reliability project that fits in both of those categories. So currently we have a fairly old facility in the Crossroads Shopping Center, and some of its flows come from the Walmart or the PetSmart area. Both those facilities are prone to having large debris that ought to not be in our sewer system, but try as we might, we are unable to successfully keep them from getting there to date, keeping their debris out of our sewer system. That lift station that's currently there is old and would need some major upgrades to just be more reliable and handle the types of debris that comes from that shopping center. So here's an opportunity to improve efficiency, operational efficiencies and reliability. Downstream of that, down the road, is a brand new Law and Justice Center that we just put online a few years back. It's a very modern facility, capable of handling all kinds of the debris from the Walmart and PetSmart area. So this is a great project opportunity for us to really improve on our efficiency and reliability. So we're basically going to bore and jack under the highway and by gravity feed the Walmart and PetSmart area down to the Law and Justice Center lift station. So I'll pause if there's any questions. I don't see any hands up at this time.
Yeah, question. Okay, is there an existing line there when you say replace old facility? Is there already a line there, or what's the bore and jack? Is it enlarging something that's already there?
Good question. No, I'm sorry, I'm not very clear, but no, that would be constructing a brand new line under the highway there that doesn't exist today. We're proposing to bore and jack under the highway and connect the two systems.
So those are betterments. Okay, I just wanted to get really clear on what we're replacing, and this is new. This is going to be new construction to benefit the shopping center. Okay.
Right. Where Eric's highlighter is where the existing Crossroad lift station is, that is outdated and really is challenged to handle the effluent and debris from the shopping center. Across the highway and down the road, Eric, with your cursor, is already an existing brand new lift station, modern, with all of the facilities capable of handling that sort of debris. So what we're proposing, Eric, if you can move your cursor, is to bore and jack under the highway and install a line to connect by gravity down to the new lift station and eliminating one of our lift stations. So we'll go from 30 lift stations down to 29 lift stations.
It's rare to have a wastewater consolidation project, but we love consolidation, so we found a way to share the love with the wastewater department.
Yes.
Director Regan.
We have we had Director Boatwright, then Director Balin, then Director Regan.
Question I have, I've seen this on the monthly operations report. How much of this work is already started, or where are we at with it?
Eric?
Well, you can see we've done this preliminary design, and the critical path for us was to secure an encroachment permit from Caltrans, which took approximately 4 months. We have that permit in hand. It's our intention to solicit from contractors bids in the next few weeks for a limited scope, which would be the bore and jack component, and then TUD's just a contractor would dig these pits, do the bore and jack, and then TUD crews would move in, connect onto the pipe somewhere in here and in here, and do the remaining connections, manholes, and pipeline in order to tie in. There's an existing 8-inch sewer line here, so we'd be tying in here, and it would gravity flow from the shopping center down across the highway down to here, and then would convey through existing pipelines, as Director Boatwright knows, down to the Law and Justice Center lift station, which has an automated screening system to remove a lot of the debris that we receive.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Director
Director
Balin?
Balin?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. So how does the old system work? How does it get down to our treatment plant currently?
Director Boatwright could probably answer that as well as anyone.
If you'd like me to take a shot at that.
Please.
The existing, Eric, if you could highlight, put your cursor over the lift station itself. From that lift station in both directions, Crossroads collects from Safeway around the backside and all the way over to the garden center on Walmart, back to the lift station. 2-inch force main travels actually north out of the shopping center and connects with the interceptor on the north side of the Sierra Railroad tracks along San Guinetti.
Wow, thank you. So we're really going to replumb this. And second question, how many customers does the new lift station on the other side of the highway currently serve, that we want to tie into?
That's actually just strictly the county facilities. It has the bus transportation yard, the juvenile center, the new jail, and I think the new courthouse just opened, didn't it?
Correct.
So it's mainly just the county facility. There's a lot of capacity left in that lift station there, Law and Justice.
So in other words, if I'm just trying to understand this for future development down here will benefit from this new lift station that I'm assuming the county paid for?
That's correct. And actually, just to clarify, the lift station that is off the screen and to the south, or to the, below the view here, it is really designed just to capture a small area, drainage area, which is really the Law and Justice Center site. So the jail, courthouse, transit center, juvenile detention. And then the county has recently hired someone to do some master planning for the site. There could be additional law offices. There could be even the Forest Service has talked about some relocation. So the site could build out, but it's a very defined area, not overly large. And then what we would be tying into from the shopping center, likewise, really would only serve the existing shopping center. So there isn't a lot of new growth potential there. It would just be some law offices down below, and possibly the Forest Service or other professional offices.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks for helping me understand.
Barbara, if where you were going, it would not be a growth project. This would actually be a good project for operations under the consolidation to fully utilize the Law and Justice lift station. Currently, that lift station actually suffers a low flow to a high capacity capability. So it would actually enhance the operation down there.
Yeah, to me, everybody pays their fair share in this stuff, including the ratepayers. Okay, thank you.
Director Ringen?
Thank you. So I had a couple of questions. First of all, the existing lift station up behind the Crossroads Shopping Center, that is what you had said, how it pumps it up through the underneath and to the front of the property, I guess. And so that's electricity being used there. Now, when this new line gets put in under the highway, will that then become a gravity flow to the other the Justice Center pump station, lift station?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's great. That I'll bet that there's been a lot of maintenance necessary at the old lift station, because I've heard several times about how Walmart has a difficult time with the homeless or indigents, or whatever you want to call them, actually flushing their clothes down the toilets and stealing new clothes. So will the gravity, I'm sure you guys have thought about this, but I just want to bring it up just in case. With that being gravity, will that sort of debris be able to make it down to the Law and Justice lift station, which, as I remember, there was an expensive piece of equipment that was designed and installed in there to chew up things like sheets and that sort of thing that might come from the jail.
I'm sure that this new line will end up on a periodic maintenance schedule, be that annual or maybe even a little bit further out, as long as it's sized right. And, you know, that's actually more of an Eric question as far as the upgrades. Will any new manholes actually have drive access to them, Eric?
So Director Boatright, as far as the flushing's concerned, exactly, that's what staff had discussed. We assumed it would be on a flushing schedule, but great question. There are two issues with the manhole access. So the lower manhole, yes. The upper manhole, we've really worked hard with Caltrans. They do not like manholes in their right of way. And so I believe we may need to omit that. I need to look back at the recent encroachment permit. Jennifer's been working on that and access it from up above, which isn't ideal, but it's still possible given the distances we're talking about. The other thing that we're trying to do, your wastewater superintendent has been, collection superintendent has been in talks with Walmart to have them fund the installation of essentially a glorified septic tank that would capture some of the garbage that comes out before it even gets into the pipeline. And that would be maintained by Walmart itself. We do believe Walmart is the primary source of this. But if we're unsuccessful there, then it's a combination of flushing and maintenance, and the size is good and the slope is reasonably good on this line. So we feel like we can get it down to the facility off the page here and remove it before it gets into the pump system.
So then my final, well, I have actually two final questions. One is how, from the Justice Center lift station, how far does it have to lift or pump before it goes to gravity to the regional wastewater plant?
Right?
Yeah, the elevation's actually reasonably, well, there's an addition of maybe 80 feet of pumping head, but the distance is not all that much different. The Long Justice Center pumps up to the Wards Ferry Bridge and goes through the bridge, passes on Old Wards Ferry to the Sam Gwinetti interceptor as well.
So we're not talking about a tremendous amount of, actually we're looking at less electrical use, and so that's probably all really, really good. Then my final question is, will that, I know it's already been answered once, but I've been watching this Law and Justice Center property and some of the plans that the county's consultants have come up with, and some of it's pretty intense. Now, how the county will ever pay for it, I don't know, but if they build that thing out, will that lift station have the capacity to take all that on, plus the Crossroads Shopping Center?
Yes, it would be the short answer. I think you'd probably push the lift station capacity somewhere up into its 65 to 75% bracket. I don't think it would max it out as far as a full build out on, you know, this limited area plus Crossroads. On the electrical power though, because we're still pumping the same wastewater, you're probably close to a break even, but it reduces the TUD infrastructure portfolio by eliminating one lift station.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for that. This looks like a really good project.
Thank you. really do appreciate the dialogue and the conversation to help everybody get a good understanding of any of these projects. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think Dawn wanted me to speak briefly about this project as well. When you look back at our proposed fiscal year 22 wastewater CIP, you'll see a common theme is lift stations, and that has been a reoccurring theme over the last few years. As Dawn mentioned, we have 30 lift stations. I think it's 30. We'll reduce it by 1 with that Crossroads consolidation, but 29 sewer lift stations, all in various states of condition. And sewer lift stations are such a critical component of the infrastructure. A failure at one of these locations is just not acceptable and could expose the district to fines and other issues. So we're very sensitive to these sites and trying to modernize them, trying to make them more reliable. With PSPS events, we're replacing generators at these. Our Gadiel DiMattei, one of your associate engineers, has been working very hard with operations to streamline delivery of these projects. We've really identified multiple vendors for sumps, multiple vendors for pumps, and in order to streamline this, because sometimes if you rely on one vendor, things can get expensive and take a lot of time, especially now. And so our crews are typically doing these jobs because they're detail oriented, require some phasing and sequencing of work while we keep the existing site in operation. This particular facility off Parrots Ferry Road is one of the largest ones the district has, highest volume flow rate, and it's serving the Columbia area in addition to upstream pumping facilities. So if this pumping facility goes down, it impacts other pumping facilities that are upstream. And we've identified some improvements, particularly a new building and generator and controls and other things. So we would like to move forward with this in the fall with TUD's crews.
Go ahead, Director Balin.
Yes. Yeah, I noticed in the last entry for this, your estimated cost in this slide has gone down almost, $20K. So that's kind of cool. So the engineer's cost estimate in the old one was a little bit higher. So this is great. And I noticed, I drove by here yesterday, and there's a big hole now in the side fascia of that one building, the larger building, which doesn't show up on this photograph. It really does look bad. Somebody really whacked it, or maybe it just started falling apart up there. So it's timely.
Yes, thank you.
Yes. All right. This particular project, the board has heard about many, many times. The new Sonora Regional Wastewater Treatment Facility. Please disregard the naming here. This is a rendering only. I know that the board will have an opportunity to name this facility appropriately when we are nearing completion. We're slated to open bids on Monday. And I will say we're expecting bids to come in high, but until we open bids, there's nothing really to report at this time. The start date is listed here as July 21. I mean, really, if the board elected to award this project, it probably wouldn't be July, it would probably be August, but the contractor would start working on getting materials procured because that's a critical path, and then construction would start sometime thereafter. And we believe that we'd be operational sometime in early 2024. The board will hear a lot of updates on this project and hopefully some site visits at various phases of construction. Our cost is $5.5 million per the letter of conditions with USDA. And then the remaining is, grant and loan. Steve will address this in the budgeting presentation that you'll hear after this.
Director Boatright?
Yeah, Eric, since you breached the subject, do we have a number count on the total number of bids that have come in?
We pre-qualified 10 contractors, and 10 contractors attended the mandatory pre-bid. So there's a good universe of eligible bidders. Jennifer and our consultant have been receiving questions, not from all 10. So we know there's still a grouping of very interested and active bidders, but we don't have any bids received yet. They usually wait until minutes before the deadline, because I've seen bidders literally in the parking lot changing their bid minutes before the bid opening based on if they got a job someplace else, or if they didn't get a job, or if they know their competitors dropping out, or for whatever reason, or they're waiting on a quote from a vendor right up to the very end. So we'll be able to report to the board next week a preliminary bid tabulation we hope to get at least 3 bids. We always hope to get at least 3 bids, but we'll know better on Monday.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, and the last one that we had planned to talk about is this study feasibility of eliminating the Twain Harte wastewater treatment plant. Okay, this is, of all the things that give Don and the rest of us some heartburn, it's this one. This is another very old wastewater treatment plant that we inherited decades ago. And honestly, we just haven't paid enough attention to this treatment plant in my estimation. So here we are, it's just time, it's beyond time, it's past time to figure out what we're gonna do. So we have options. We can rebuild in place, which would cost millions of dollars likely, or we can eliminate, or something in between. What's important to know is what is integral to this treatment plant is also the Twain Harte interceptor, which we've been talking about for years. And Rich Pitcher, our collection superintendent, him and his crews have been working very hard on doing an assessment of the Twain Harte interceptor. And thus far, we're very pleased at what we see as far as the health of the interceptor. But nevertheless, what we do with this treatment plant does play a role on the Twain Harte interceptor, so they go hand in hand. We have a consultant, Pace, who you're familiar with. They're planned to come up here next week, I believe, and take a tour of the treatment plant and begin the process of this study, helping TUD guide its way through what we're going to do with this treatment plant. And all along the way, I would really love for you guys to chime in and give input and ask these types of questions you're asking now, just to help us hit the mark here. So looking forward to this one getting off underway, and in the future years, planning to budget for whatever decisions we make. So if you have any questions, I'm ready. Go ahead, Director Balin.
Okay, so this is a brand new one I don't see it in this, correct?
I'm gonna have to believe you, Barbara. I study these things and I lose track. But if it's a new one, it's not meant. I know we've been talking about this study for a couple of years.
Okay. I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I'm just thinking before we get too far down that this would just be really cool if the wastewater committee was able to be tasked with tracking the progress on this and go forward to the whole board, to save a little bit of time at the board meetings, to be able to track the progress and make sure it's that they're going to give some preliminary input to this.
Sure.
too.
Good-
So
good.
I just think it'd be cool if it went to the wastewater committee at the beginning of the inception
All
and
right.
have a walkout. Yeah.
Yeah, good idea. Thank you. Go ahead, Dr. Boatright.
Yeah, I just want to know where you found that 30-year-old picture you got there.
I
Um,
you know, I
have-
know there's, I hear you. I don't know either.
um,
David, you're not supposed to call us out like that.
well, I'm sorry, but when you do that so blatantly in front of me, that so noting that this picture that we're looking at is of a very old age. That catwalk that we're seeing in the center has been basically condemned. You can't get out on there. Those two aerators are no longer in use. I do believe that we need to study this, but I'm going to question the cost on this one a little bit, that as far as the detail of what we would get. Is this inclusive of engineering as the prospector? Towards what we would need to, basically bypass this treatment plant?
You want to take that, Eric, or I can try?
Well, the answer is yes. So we've identified this cost based on preliminary discussions with PACE, but the actual work scope will come in more detail after we do this site visit next week with PACE. But given the cost estimate, I think it's in the range to provide the design as well as the planning. But again, it's based on a level of effort where most of the design is going to be in the interceptor improvements, not so much at if our goal is to abandon the treatment facility. There will be some work on this site as well. But short answer is we don't have the exact number, even though it says 342,500 sounds very exact. That was based on discussions with PACE and a preliminary proposal that still needs a little refinement.
Yeah. Would we be able to use the state revolving fund for at least a portion of that? I know that wouldn't cover engineering, but maybe that would cover the preliminary site plan and study for what we could do to improve that.
We absolutely could, Director Boatright. We could get a planning grant. We've done it before. We got a $450,000 planning grant for the wastewater plant, the Sonora Regional. We could try to do the same here. I think they make you wait 5 years, so we actually may not be far off from that time frame. The other thing that's just out there that the board's aware of is the septic failures in the Crystal Falls Basin, and I see Director Ringen has his hand up. So I'll just say that we'll have to factor that into the capacity of the interceptor and whatever design and route we end up going.
Yeah. And then just one last note for the board. The overall treatment plant up there, it was constructed in 1964. So it's well over half a century old treatment plant, along with some upgrades along the way, but overall, a fairly old facility.
Go ahead, Director Ringen.
So a couple of things. President Balin, on page 9-2, number 60 is where this initial portion of the project is mentioned. The other thing is that I wanted to ask, I've visited this facility, and yes, a little something needs to be done. Let's put it that way. And I guess what my question is, it's been kept in use because it basically pre-treats the influent. And anyways, this is my understanding, and Mr. Perkins can correct me if I'm wrong. But then, because of this facility, that's why the interceptor line, that's what the interceptor line was designed for, was partially pre-treated, not for completely raw sewage. Now, if this is eliminated, now you've got raw sewage running, and I'm assuming that too will be gravity to the interceptor. How is that going to affect that interceptor? Because we were already concerned about that.
Right, all good questions, and I should have mentioned that some of these things early in the. So this primarily serves all of the Twin Arts CSD area. So that's their effluent, raw effluent, goes to this treatment plant. And David, Director Boatwright, you know, formerly wastewater superintendent, knows this far better than I do. But so it collects the raw sewage from Twainhart. It goes to this treatment plant and actually gets pretty good treatment, you know, almost full treatment. It actually performs pretty well for its age. But so yes, it does treat it. We remove the debris. There's a debris removal system at the headworks. So we pull out all the trash, we process the raw sewage, get it to near secondary treatment, and then well, not all by gravity, we got to pump it up to a gravity portion, and then yes, it enters the Twainhart interceptor, which was constructed in, I think, 1975. That interceptor has been a major discussion for many years now, and I had mentioned that for the last 2 or 3 years, Superintendent Rich Pitcher and his crews have been taking segments of the interceptor and assessing them, taking a good look at them, and so far, the segments we've looked at are in pretty good shape. But yes, all of those things you mentioned, Director Ringen, have to be considered in this study.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Director Balin.
Sorry. Okay, I did find it in our last year's CIP, and there's a great aerial photograph. There's actually 2 good sized basins. Are those ducks in this picture, Eric? 2 little ducks in the foreground?
In the picture we're looking at right now?
Yeah, on your slide.
You might be seeing ducks. I know that they're out there from time to time, but this is a 30-year-old photo, so those ducks have grown up now.
I had to look at it closely. No, that's Director Boatwright knows exactly what that is.
Yeah.
You know,
That's actually,
I guess my sorry, go ahead, David.
that's actually the recirculation inlet structure. There's a recirculation water for the clarifier if needed. And to the south, just to the south of this picture would be a pump basin. So what you're kind of seeing is the edges of a culvert. But you know, the Twainhart treatment plant, the deer, the squirrels, the mountain lions, the ducks, the turtles, they're all up there. Seen them all.
And I think that's my point. Again, if we really took a look at the multiple benefits of something like this, I mean, I appreciate and you know, the consolidation, frame of mind and the elimination of something extra, but this could have community benefit. There could be an opportunity to clean up the water and use it as some auxiliary fire protection up there. You know, just thinking could be good to kick this around in committee and think about something multiple benefit here, just as an alternative. When we look at alternatives, elimination being one of the alternatives.
Great suggestion, Barbara. Thank you very much.
And actually, in order to get any grant funding, they would require that. And any CEQA would require some form of an alternatives analysis. So totally agree. I if there aren't any other questions, would you like me to advance slide?
Sure. There's only one more, and it's simple.
That's
Yeah.
it.
So we've had a pretty good discussion, but I really want to emphasize that this is for the board's review and discussion. We're open to any and all questions. Don't worry about catching us off guard. It's okay if you do, and we hope you don't.
Before we go on to Steve, I just wanted to thank the staff for carrying on. I know it's been a little rocky right now, not having a point person. And I just want to commend you guys for, moving everything, all the parts and pieces forward. The committee structure is new, and I just really applaud staff for the job you guys are doing. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And likewise, we know it's not been the easiest for you, and we've all chipped in, including all of you. So we're going to get through this thing. That's all there is to it. Thank you. That's it for us, Melissa, I think. Unless there's a public comments.
Yes. Any public comment before we move on to the next item?
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay. Well, Melissa, would you next regular business item?
Okay, item number 2, introduction and discussion of the fiscal year 22 operating budget.
Good morning, all.
Okay.
Steve Sheffield, your TUD Finance Director. Healthy discussion there. I guess tag I'm it now. Off we go in a little bit different direction, but these two really go hand in hand. Before I start, I want to reemphasize something Don and Eric said, is that as we've listed in the agenda, really our intent here is for today to be an introduction first and foremost to this information, and also to promote a discussion. With that said, like Don mentioned, I have about 12 slides. I would typically kind of rip through those 12 slides and then circle back and let you ask any and all questions. But like Don said, I'm more than happy. Stop me anytime. I really want today to be, I guess my focus would be educational. I know it's Director Murphy's kind of first time through our budget process. Director Boatwright's been through it kind of from the other side as being a TUD superintendent. But even for, Director Kearns, I think he's been through it once or twice before. Director Ringen, Director Balin, obviously you've heard my stories and you've been with me for a number of years, but I think it's always good to kind of do that, educational intent. There's obviously some critical factors we need to address, and hopefully that comes up during our discussion, but we can always follow up with it. So with that said, I'm going to jump over and share my screen, and hopefully I do as well as Eric did here. And so am I sharing now? Do you see the big blue screen? Yes. Okay, and I'm assuming you can see my cursor as well. So, one of the key things, and I think Director Murphy had asked this before, is we operate on a fiscal year. And for TUD, it's June 30th is our fiscal year. I can't believe it's already June 3rd, but here we are. And so what we're talking about is really an annual budget, if you will. You mentioned a couple times that since the 2015 rate study, we did put together a 5-year CIP plan, which is very typical. And each year you would drop off 1 year, reassess the projects as far as what gets promoted, what gets delayed, and update that. But in our operational budget, there is also that component for the annual CIP. So we're also going to be circling back to that, and Don had some totals in there. And so I'm going to go ahead and hopefully I can advance the screen. It advanced, I'm assuming, for all of you to show the budget calendar. So I threw this in just this morning because this is really an internal document, but I thought it was important for the board. There is a timing factor here. You know, first and foremost, being a California special district, a local government agency, our budget rules are a little bit different than the state or the county or the feds or the city or whatever else. You know, technically, they have to adopt the budget before July 1st. You hear all the time, federal government doesn't adopt budget, state doesn't adopt budget, no checks go out, anything else. Well, we're not quite as draconian as that with our mandates, but on the same token, you know, the board adopted an annual budget last year, and that's in effect through June 30th. So July 1st, we will either be proceeding with our newly adopted budget or we'll proceed without a budget. So I added the calendar here. You know, we did the mid-year review for the board, being an annual budget. We go 6 months through December 31st numbers, bring it to the board. We brought it to the board this year on February 23rd. And as soon as that's done, we came up with this calendar. And so you can see here in early April, we began with the department heads and superintendents, and then the budgets were returned to the general manager, including CIP. Well, little hiccup this year, and this is the first time that I'm aware of where we didn't have a general manager. Essentially at TUD, the budget's one of the primary responsibilities for the general manager. And so this typical calendar, everything would have been brought back to the general manager. They would have provided direction, input. They would have reviewed the CIP. Those two get brought together. Then early May, the GM would have finalized the budget, and then we would have a budget workshop. And that's what we've done for probably the last 10 or 11 years now. And so we proceeded, as Dawn said, to the best of our ability. We wanted to be consistent with what the district's done. We wanted to give it every effort we could, but as Dawn mentioned, I love to say that it's just our best laid plan at this point in time. Things change, obviously. You have fire, you have drought, you have accidents, whatever might come up, we got to be mobile. But we've done a really good job, I think, over the decades of really analyzing, planning, and putting forth to the board the staff's, in their expert opinion, the best laid out plan at this point to accomplish our documented and approved strategic plans. So in this one here, you can see that originally we were hoping to have a budget workshop on May 20th. That kind of came and went. And then we always provide an extra board meeting. So like today, it's really all about an introduction and education. You're not adopting anything. We're seeking your input. And then we would typically, ideally the last several years, probably the last 5 or 6 years, the first meeting in June is when we bring the full formal budget, formal CIP, formal strategic plan to the board for adoption. Well, we're not going to have it next week, clearly in there. But ideally, if things go right, I would like us to try to target the 22nd. I know it's a week early this year, but you know, best practice would say we really need to adopt a budget by the 1st. If there's some critical factors and we're not able to, we obviously can continue just like we are. But if we need an extra meeting next week, the week after that, the week after that, we still have this time, I hope, to achieve that goal. So with that said, this presentation today, really what I'm looking at is these are the key topics that I wanted to bring the board's attention. Again, with the objective of education, questions, and to let you know what the process is. And so there are going to be revenues, labor, non-labor O&M, a summary, that's the real kind of critical recap, if you will, the heart of the matter. And then any alternatives we want to think about and talk about. So first and foremost, when we deal with revenues, in front of you, you have 2 separate tables for water and sewer. The revenues include service charges, property taxes, debt service recovery, facility capital charges, and other income. The district anticipates realizing $17.5 million in annual water revenue and $7.2 million in annual sewer revenue in fiscal year 22, for a combined total revenue of $25 million. The approach to revenue budgeting is to first and foremost look at historical billing and consumption data. as well as projecting the current year. Drought throws us a little off in our projections, but again, we typically go back 10 years, look at historical data and do that. Another critical factor is, you need to note that last scheduled rate increase was effective January 1st, 2020. So we have no other rate increases since that time. And just as a reminder, with that January 1st, 2020 rate, our basic rates for water is $64.50 a month, and our basic rate for sewer is $51 a month. So the total TUD for those customers that have both water and sewer is presently $115.50. When you look at what does that mean, where's our picture, how are our rates, funding our operations and what it is, I think it's important to understand we're a revenue fund, or an enterprise revenue fund, an enterprise government fund. And what that means is that first and foremost, we're required by law to charge sufficient revenues to cover operations, to cover debt service, to cover infrastructure needs, and to cover reserves. And those are whatever service charges we do collect, those fees collected are to recover the cost of providing water and wastewater services. And they go a step farther and say revenue shall not be used for any other purpose other than for which the fee or charge was imposed. So even here you can see, 94% in service charges, but then we have $1 million in property taxes. Well, when we did our last rate study, we took that 1.2 million property taxes and made that part of the rate study rather than charging customers the extra $1 million. So the 1.2 is a discretionary revenue, but under our rate plan that's in effect right now, that's going to cover operations. The other comment I thought was important when we put this together is that there's a whole lot of talk right now about the drought, about conserving, about what happened last time in 14 and 15. And we made some significant changes in our rate structure to go away, back when they started the 20% by 2020, they really wanted the state's recommendations that most districts should go to the vast majority of their feed be volumetric or consumption based. Well, that's fine if you're in San Diego and you buy water and you turn around and you sell water, but we don't do that. For us here, the majority of our costs are fixed, whether we're delivering water or not. So in that 2015 rate study, we shifted our tiers to go away from a 6-tier system and go to a base amount that includes a certain amount of water to everyone. And what that's done is over the time, right now, these service charges I'm showing here, about 75% of the treated water is coming from our base charges. So if we were forced to the state mandate to conserve water or whatever, we're only looking at that 25% of potential reduction due to the drought or due to conservation mandates. And if you even go a step farther, we include 400 cubic feet a month as a base with our fixed charge at no additional charge. And the vast majority of our customers since the last drought have stayed under that amount. So it's not even, you can't just take this number and say, oh, if they do a 20% reduction, here's what we're going to have. A lot of information, just keep it in the background. And I'm sorry, Barbara, I see your hand up.
I was going to wait till you're done, but before we move from the slide, when did we shift the property tax? Typically, or in the past, the property tax had been set for special projects, and now it's been rolled over to O&M. When did that shift occur?
Well, when you say now, it predates me. So I believe it was the 2008 rate study the decision was made by the board that rather than raise the rates, they included it in the rate increase at that time, and it stayed that way ever since. So it hasn't changed that I'm aware of since 2008.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so I'll keep going. Michaela, feel free to interrupt me if I don't see the hands. I get a little caught up. So I'll jump to the very next slide, which is total combined outlays. And so this is both water and sewer, but I think it's an important perspective here that out of the pie of $32 million is what this budget before you has projected, that labor makes up almost 40%, non-labor is 20%, and then the capital, the CIP that was just presented is another 41%. Consistent with the type of service the district provides, the primary purposes of expenditures in the budget are personnel related, meaning salaries and benefits, and then materials and services. Again, a note, since conservation and droughts on all our minds, is that for TUD's operation, conservation has, you could call a nominal effect on expenses, but rather it typically increases our expenses because we're still providing the same, but we have the outreach, we have the additional staff time. So really, I think that's an important concept to understand. So I'm gonna jump ahead, labor being the single biggest one. This chart is showing the board, when you see labor on the financial statements, what's included. And you know, you have wages at 56% of total labor. You have insurance, 15%, PERS. Just as a reminder, I'm sure everybody knows, it's the public employee retirement system. So that's our retirement contributions. We have retiree health, also referred to as OPEB, O-P-E-B. I'll refer to that in the next slide. And then we have taxes. So, you know, it's not just the straight wages, it's everything that goes along with it to get us to that $12.5 million. The labor budget, you know, the process, this is our biggest factor in everything else. And so the process for coming up with this budget is we analyze each individual employee, and then we forecast all the related factors, including overtime, step increases, workers' comp, insurance rates. So, you know, it's Abby's involved from the admin services, HR side of it, payroll's involved, all the superintendents and everything else. So, you know, and I think they do a really great job getting down to it and really projecting this out. Obviously, it's sometimes hard to tell what's going to happen with health insurance rates or, you know, overtime requirements, but we look at it historically and we literally take it down to an individual position by position level.
Director Bateman has her hand raised.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Barbara.
That's okay. I just want to make sure that I'm reading this right, Steve. The previous slide is the total labor expense, including insurance, et cetera. Is that the 39% there?
Yep. You can see the 12.5 million in the graph, and there's 12.45.
And so that's actually gone down compared to in the past where labor has been upwards of 60% of our outlay.
Yeah, you know, there have been changes in there. I think one of the key factors to that, if you go back to 9-10 years ago when we were doing the rate study and a lot of this was under attack, a lot of agencies don't include the capital when they're calculating that. So if you took this graph right here and just took labor and non-labor, labor would be, I think, somewhere around 2/3. 66%. You know, if you look at an elementary school district, their labor to the total cost would probably be in excess of 80%. Manufacturing might be the opposite and stuff, but I think that percentage has gone down somewhat, but other areas have gone up, as we're all aware, retirement, health insurance, some of these other ones. But, you know, in terms of our budget, we're budgeting all three components here. So yeah, it shows 39%, but keep in mind that's of the total, including CIP.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Thanks for asking. Okay.
Director Reagan?
Oh, yes, sir. Sorry, Ron, I don't see you on my screen.
No, that's okay. This Zoom thing, I can't wait for it to end and we can all be in the same room and converse normally. So I think, wouldn't you agree that part of the reason why labor's gone down has been some reduction in the labor force, not very much, but some, and then the new employees are hired on a different type of benefit schedule and so on?
Yeah. You're correct.
Thank you.
So with that, the next slide kind of alludes to what Director Ringen was referring to, and I added this in a few years ago, and I kind of kept it there because I can't think of a single day I don't open the paper and hear them talking about, PERS is increasing their pension rates, and we should, we need changes with governmental retirement plans and all these other things. So first and all, just a reminder, PERS and OPEB. PERS is our public employee retirement system. That's through CalPERS. It's our retirement plan. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits. Could be different from agency to agency. For TUD, it really refers to retiree health. So in the previous slide, that's what I call it, but you'll see this acronym a lot. But several years ago, there was a real concern about how fast these numbers are going up. Both of these numbers, PERS and OPEB, are driven by the actuaries, okay? And I refer to actuaries as voodoo accounting. I mean, it's really hard to follow, but as a CPA, it's kind of, they do their thing and we do our thing. And, in their world, PERS basically does an actuarial valuation of the retirement system every year. I believe it's about 2 years behind, but they do it every year, and they can change the assumptions radically, depending what's happening with the investment market, depending what's happening with the age of retirees, the average life expectancy, the cost of when they retire, all those sort of things. And so it does go up and down over the years, but you always hear this, PERS is going up, and when PERS goes up, it sticks it to the employers and sometimes the employees as well. So, and OPEB's the same way, except OPEB, we basically do an actuary evaluation every 2 years. So we are due for one. We're going to do one as soon as we get through June 30th, 2021. But what you have here, the top section up there, this part of it is what right now the actuarial valuations say are going to be the total cost for the next 4 years. Really, these first two are locked in. They won't change. If PERS does their valuation, it'll change 23 and 24. The actuarial valuation comes in at 21. It will change probably 23 and 24 as well. But these are the totals we have right now. So then if we look at what does it mean to this budget, I've highlighted the percentage change. So right now, PERS at their last actuarial valuation said it's going to go up probably 4%. OPEB's going to go up 11%. And OPEB is really driven by health insurance. Okay, remember that's retiree health insurance. So that's what drives that. But the combined total is 7%. So what does that mean for TUD? So for fiscal year 22, this budget we're doing, we're looking at an additional $185,000 in addition to what we had last year and what we know right now. Now, a lot of people, what can you do about medical health insurance? What can you do about OPEB? Well, the district's done several things over the past. If you go back a number of years, we instituted a vesting plan. And so basically, the employees have to be here a certain time period before they start vesting. They start at 50% and then it increases. The next biggest change that happened is they talk about this PEMCA, which is Public Employee Health Account. And when the PEPRA rule changes came from Sacramento, and that's what Director Ringen was referring to, now we've gone from the majority of our employees at one time were considered classic retirees. Then we have PEPRA employees. So the ones that came in with PEPRA after that time, the rules are different. How much they contribute is different. There's limitations on what districts can provide. And also the district took that time to say for PEPRA employees, rather than guaranteeing them full medical retirement for the rest of their lives, they're only going to be eligible for the district to provide this PEMCA minimum. And so over the course of, I guess, Abby can correct me if I'm way off, but, especially over the course of the last 5 to 8 years, we've gone to a vast majority of employees being classic. To now, I think it's probably just in the majority PEPRA. But you know, it definitely every time someone retires, that's a classic employee going out. And typically when we hire somebody new, there's a PEPRA employee coming on board. So that has some real ramifications. And I know this is a lot of numbers, a lot of data, but I think it's important for the board to at least have this general understanding of it. So let's jump over to something more straightforward. We talk about non-labor operations and maintenance. For this budget, what we've come up with, non-labor expenses, we're projecting a budget overall of $6.3 million for fiscal year 22. The budget process for non-labor is to analyze some 40 categories utilizing the 10 years past data plus current year projection. We seek out input from the managers and superintendents. We contact outside agencies such as TPPA and Aqua JPIA. And as a reminder, TPPA is who we get our electricity from. Aqua JPIA is providing our general insurance and some of that. And then also to try and look at an inflation factor where appropriate. And I can tell you this year, that's tough. You know, like you hear Eric all the time, dollars are going up, inflation's coming, materials, supplies. Typically what we've done in the past is we go to the Caltrans economic report and we look at, and their projection for next year was 2.3% as a cost of living and inflation factor. We don't apply that blindly. We really analyze every single category. And so what I did is I just took the top 10. Who do we spend, what do we spend the most money on? And the top 10 is made up of 3.8 million or 61% of that grand total I told you. All the other 40 categories would be something else. Now, if you look at most of these, they'd be the same year after year. We look at electricity, we look at chemicals, repairs, testing and monitoring, insurance, tools and equipment, fuel. That's what it takes to run TED system. We're gonna have that. Some of them are gonna go up and down. You know, we're analyzing fuel. We looked at the past 6 months because we know fuel's changed radically as well as the past 10 years. Some of these other ones like consultants, legal, I mean, that's going to change based on what's going on. Are we doing some big study? Are we, you know, having a legal, you know, our district council attend board meetings? Are they helping out with interim GM? What's going on? And so this is what we've projected at this point as far as what we've included in the budget. This is a big reveal. This is the kind of the money slide, if you will, for me that summarizes everything together. And what, you know, while I'm going through every single line item, every single department, my goal is to get to this point and say, where the heck do we sit? So I've separated water fund and sewer fund into two separate columns. The very top one is the revenues that we showed from that other slide. Then we have outflows. For the purposes of this slide, I broke it down between labor, services and supplies, and debt service. Right now we have very little debt service, but we are looking at doing the regional. And so that has been taken into account to get to total outflows. So our net before capital, our net before capital, which this is a positive number, that's good. There were many years in the past where we didn't have a net before capital. And then here's what Don and Eric just showed you as far as what we have so far. That gets us to a negative net after capital for water and sewer. And so we start looking at reserves. Well, last year when we first started talking about PG&E, the board wanted to set aside $500,000 a year for the PG&E reserve. So that's included there. Operating reserve and contingency reserve, that's a percentage or number of days of the total operation cost. So this is what we need to contribute to get up to that level. And then existing capital reserves, you see it's a positive number. I mean, this is how, you know, Eric showed the amount we have to contribute for the regional plan. I think it was $5.5 million. Well, sewer has these capital reserves from, you know, past times. And so that's going to be pulled out to get us to the total reserve amount, which in sewer fund, that gets us to a bottom balanced budget of 0. But water fund, we basically have a shortage of $2 million. And, you know, for those of you that were here last year and the year before that, you know, for several years now, we have come up with, hey, we don't have enough, but there's not enough area up here that we think we should cut. And these capital improvements are critical. And that's what we've been saying. So we're going to do that. So if we go forward and we did everything we planned on right now, we need to come up with $2 million of planned financing. Now, how do you do that? You know, there's literally loans, grants. Some projects get delayed. Some projects end up being less than they're planned on. A variety of factors. But, you know, if I point to last year's budget, we had about $2 million as well. And when we gave the last financial report, and you talked about the CIP update as far as where we are, I anticipate us to finish this year without us have gotten any planned financing. And that was due to a variety of factors. It's due to grants we obtained. It's due to some delays in projects. But it's not unusual to go into here. You know, typically this is how we balance the budget, by saying we need another $2 million. So let me jump ahead real quick. I'm sure you might have questions on this one, but we can come back to it, because, you know, really the question is now, the discussion is, are we all okay with $2 million deficit like we had last year and where we're at? Or do we want to look at, you know, how could we reduce that deficit, or how could we do away with it? And so first of all, what are the alternatives? When you look at revenues, a lot of people say, well, just raise revenues or whatever. Well, obviously we got a lot going on with PG&E acquisition and some of the other ones, but we have been over this past year really looking at all our real property. And is any of it truly surplus? Could we sell that off? Now, there's a lot of hoops to jump through. You have to go through, I believe, LAFCO. You have to get surveys. You have to do appraisals. And we're doing that, but it's going to take time. And it's going to take time to identify and determine what's surplus, and then to actually sell it. And also, as Eric alluded, we're currently looking at adding additional property. So it may be more of a wash than a deficit reduction. And it may take more time than we have with this very next year's operating budget. Grants, we're always looking for grants. You know, obviously we've gotten money, we've gotten a grant from IRWM, we've gotten grants through CDBG, we're looking at state revolving fund. There's a whole lot of talk about stimulus grants from the federal level to the state level. But I think that makes me feel a little bit better. I know Jeff's probably smiling at me in the past. I said, I don't like it to be, you know, I think 3 years ago, it was like $4 million deficit. Oh, we'll be okay. You know, 2 million is better than 3. And I told Don 1 million is probably better than 2, and Don wants to get to 0 one of these years, but hopefully we'll get there someday. Loans, we talked about loans. Eric mentioned we were successful with the USDA. Hopefully we can be successful with some more of those. When in need be, we have gone out and gotten loans like we did with the hydrovac truck on a short-term basis. I don't prefer to do that. I want us to get caught up, get out of that deficit, and we've been very successful at doing that. And we're looking at starting a rather large project with a 40-year loan to USDA, but at a low interest rate. Investment income, I'd love to tell all of you, you know, we invested in Apple and we have billions of dollars that we made from the increase in it and stuff like that, but I don't know if any of you follow up, but LAIF, the Local Agency Investment Fund, as of May 27th, was paying 0.3% interest. So it's going to take time for the market in there. I don't see that as really being a help to us. Capacity charges, you're right. If the jail, the Law and Justice Center, if they were to do some big development out there, they would pay additional capacity charges. Over the past 5 years, our capacity charges have ranged anywhere from $300,000 to $1.2 million. But keep in mind, the capacity charges can only be used for CIP, but it helps offset some of our other ones. What other alternatives? You might say, well, what about labor? What can we do with that? I already mentioned on the OPEB, you know, we've done a vesting schedule. We've done a minimum health insurance requirement in there. I just feel all the board member needs to understand that the OPEB funding itself, the contribution requirements of the plan members and the district are established by and may be amended by the board of directors. the board of directors adopted the annual pre-funding contribution policy for a 10-year phase-in based on a percentage of the actuarial determined contribution. Originally, the plan members did not make any contributions to the OPLED plan, and they still don't. We've kind of kicked that around. Some districts are considering that. We've gone from when we initiated this first retiree health plan of funding it 100%. Then we went to 0%. We didn't pay anything towards it. And then now we're on this 10% increment. And the 10% increment for this budget is up to 80%. And what that means is the idea is if you fully fund this average daily determined contribution, it will hopefully pay for itself. It's kind of the same way PERS looks in there. If we continue to fund this trust that's for the employees' retiree health and the investment market gets back to more normal level, it will basically pay for itself. And that's why you'll see those expenses decrease over time in there. But in the meantime, we have what's called pay-go. And what pay-go means, and I know there's a lot of information, guys, I'm trying to get through it, so thank you for your patience. But the pay-go is really what we're doing for existing retirees. These are the ones we're paying it out of there. And rather than take it out of this trust we've established, we've continued to contribute this into it. Now, as of the end of April, that trust is now $10 million. Fantastic. We got it set aside. To me, that basically guarantees this promised benefit to existing employees that were part of that before any of the changes. But the net liability is still another $8 million. So I really don't see this as a solution, and I wouldn't recommend it. It involved part of the MOU and union negotiations and some other real things. So I don't really see that's it. So that kind of leaves with what else? Last slide, I promise. We can open it up for discussion. But in putting this together, I kind of said, well, you know, what we've done and what we have so far, are we okay? I mean, given what Eric's telling me, every time the bidders are raising their rates and the cost of fuel's going up and everything else. So what are these areas in here, and are they sufficient, or could they be reduced? And I came up with basically three key areas. And this is really where I kind of need, you know, I would like the board's input and everything else. And consultants goes up and down based on what's going on. This proposed budget has $460,000 in it. And you might say, well, what's in that? Well, we've got $180,000 for the water needs assessment for the Bureau of the New Malonas. Is that enough? 180? I don't know. Are we going to need it this year? Are we going to need it over 10 years? Are we going to have an agreement with Chicken Ranch? I don't know. We have $169,000 for the lobbyists. The board, you know, they're $14,000 a month. The board, you know, renewed their contract on there, so we have it in there. We have a GM recruitment, $50,000. I'm assuming we're going to hire somebody to do a GM recruitment, but not really sure on that. And then the rest of them are like surveys and appraisals related to the property, Western Hydro, a little finishing up of urban water management plan. But, you know, I've heard talk at the board level too of doing some species studies, doing some additional CEQA, NEPA, and some of these other ones. Well, you know, if that's the board's direction, then we kind of probably need to add more on here. But again, I'm just throwing it out for discussion. The next one's legal fees. The legal fees in here is $281,000. It basically consists of $145,000 for Jesse Barton and $136,000 for other related to the PG&E acquisition. What's going on there? Obviously, Jesse's performing in a role right now that we didn't anticipate. We're not sure where that's going. He contributed his amounts. If we were to hire a GM, I'm sure it'd change that number. Are we going to have more things? Are we going to have lawsuits, not lawsuits, or anything else? But this is our best estimate this time. Last item, promise, public outreach. When I say outreach, I think it's really more educational information. We've heard the board, all 5 board members talk before about how we want to engage a firm to assist us with this, do this as soon as possible. And what might that look at? This budget right now, we included $200,000. And that includes $65,000 for Raftellus and their financial plan. It includes $40,000 for a parcel tax survey, which is what our estimate was that we got from the county on that. And then it includes about another $100,000 for, some specialist firms, some ongoing things that we do typically as far as notifying our customers and outreach and education, some other ones. So, ton of information. That's kind of where we sit for today as far as that. Please, let's have a discussion. Any and all questions, I'm happy to try and answer.
Ron Reagan, just prior to your question, we had David Boatwright exit the meeting and notified Melissa McMullen that he will not be returning. And now your question, Ron Reagan.
Thank you. Okay, Steve, back to your last slide. A couple of kind of questions and then just a comment. That legal amount, that's what you're guessing will be for this coming budget? Did I get that right?
Well, I'd like to say I didn't guess at anything, but the way I came up with the legal was I contacted both Jesse Barton as well as all the PG&E people involved and asked them to give me their estimate as to what their time requirement would be based on their current responsibilities and what we have left. And that resulted in 145 for everything district council is doing, including PG&E, and then another 136,000 for outside consultants.
Okay, yeah, and I wasn't inferring that you were guessing on that number. It was me that was referring to that. I was guessing that that's what you had done.
I understand. Thank you, Ron.
So how does that figure compare with what was spent last year?
I don't have that readily available, but like I said before, the number really changes year to year. We've been talking about PG&E for a number of years now, and the requirements and needs change dramatically. We've had some years way back when it was very low, other years when we might have something specific going on. I'd have to double check that, Ron, and give you a comparison.
Well, where I'm going with this is, I like how you reached out and got figures, guesstimates from various legal people that are going to be providing legal and what they feel the costs are going to be. Because you couldn't put together the budget without having some basically good idea. But I think that let's say that figure is going to hold. And as far as the PG&E thing goes, it's whatever it takes for us to acquire that infrastructure and water rights. So this is money well spent. And I think that we're going to find that as far as Jesse Barton goes, once we have a GM in place, his involvement and fees are going to drop dramatically, except for the PG&E type thing, or if we run into a problem, which cross my fingers, we don't, because we had a GM that had to be on the phone 3-4 times a day to Jesse, and that had to have run the bill right through the roof. The other thing that I wanted to ask, and then I'll go away, is consultants. Is there a way that the board could be presented without causing a big project that's time consuming for staff, but break the consultants down and the lobbyists and all that, and then try to put a value as to what they brought in because of the money that we've spent on them? Because just seeing a figure and getting a presentation by them. I mean, it always sounds like they've done so much and everything's rosy and good, but I'd like to see the real figures, or at least the best known real figures, so that we can decide, the board can decide, well, maybe we don't need this consultant so much, or maybe we don't need that group so much. But it would give us some room and some thinking stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, just, to respond, Director Ringen, I agree with you. I'm a black and white numbers and cents and pennies and all that sort of stuff kind of guy as well. And, it's very challenging with a lot of these. As we all know, some of these consultants and studies and everything else, there's not just an economic value necessarily. It might, it's easy to say, oh, this got us $1 million grant. But, having that shovel-ready project might get us a grant down the road. Or as Director Balin frequently says, that might assist us with multiple uses and some of these other ones. And again, I want to clarify, the screen I'm showing you here is not intended to, by any means, promote or say these are the ones that should be reduced. Those are the ones I'm kind of worried about. Is there enough in there? Your discussion about specifically lobbyists, that I think was the real purpose of that special board meeting we had with them. And I wanted them to tell you what they had done. I can't turn around and point to you and say, hey, we spent $14,000 last month and they brought me in $20,000 revenue. That just hasn't happened. Now, is what they're doing right now going to result in us getting a $35 million USDA Sierra Pines grant? It might. I don't know. I expressed concern when we first went to getting lobbyists and how they work. But, it's kind of like having an attorney. In the good old days, I don't need an attorney unless I'm in trouble. But gosh, you got to have an attorney all the time or else. And so I really don't know on those lobbyists. I think the 4 managers can contribute from their perspective what they see as the plus or minus by having a lobbyist. But, again, I would love to just show you a spreadsheet or a table. And that's kind of why I listed out how much we're paying them. I can tell you that. But, it's kind of like this water needs assessment. Everybody says we got to do it. But, gosh, they haven't done that in, 30 years or 40 years? The U.S. Bureau. So I don't know what that means. And it's really hard for me to budget that and come up with it. But, my goal and intention here is to come up with a workable budget that shows that the board and TUD is taking seriously its fiscal responsibilities to our ratepayers, to the community, something that we can live with, not exorbitant, not excessive, but still achieving these critical factors to providing water and wastewater. That's what we do. These operation costs, and I was going to jump back just real quick while you were talking on there. We were looking at those as an alternative. If you look in here, just in water alone, our services and supplies is $4 million. So if we were to cut, 100,000 out of the consultants or whatever else, that the vast majority of it is here. This is what I'm telling y'all, that we got to do that. And I don't see, us nickel and diming this to really help us with this bottom line down here. So I hope that makes sense. My approach has always been to have a conservative budget, to have a realistic budget. And I think historically over the past decade, we've been doing that. We're obviously, times are changing and doing that, but that's what I'm trying to provide the board with.
Yeah, I think that, I think what you're doing is great. And I've said that for years. I respect how you operate and keep our finances as much in shape as you can. But I think that all the consolidation that staff has been planning and doing is going to help with those line items you were just bringing up. That's number one. This is going to get better and better. as infrastructure replacement gets done, like the Willow Springs. How many thousands, maybe $1 million that might save a year from not having to send out crews on overtime at night and do a patch and then have to patch the street and then come right back the next day and do another one just a few feet away. So I think this thing's going to get better and better as the consolidation goes on. And the only one last thing I'll say is that water needs an assessment. That just has to get done because from my understanding, and I could be wrong, that's the last thing holding up basically us getting that agreement from the Bureau of Reclamation for the water out of New Maloney's. That just needs to get done. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
We have
Barbara,
Director Bailey.
Before you start, would you like me to take down my screen, or we still want to look at some stuff on the screen?
I'm good, Steve. If you want to bring the people back on, I don't need to look at the screen. Okay, great.
Thank
I just
you.
have a quick question. So what you're asking us to adopt on June 22nd is approval of this budget, which includes this board being willing to say, yes, we're going to go, we're going to take on $2 million in deficit spending. Is that the way I understand it?
You know, again, it's challenging with the timeline and what we're doing. Today is really an introduction. What I see as the next natural step is that if today we could have some consensus, if the board's comfortable with what you just proposed, that's kind of number one. Now, we can certainly tweak it or adjust it. You know, if Don or Eric came in and said, well, there's 100,000 based on the bids we just opened Monday, that we need to adjust it, I would revise what I just showed you, because again, I'm not asking you to adopt it. I'm just saying this is our best budget today. And then we would adjust it by that 100,000, and then ideally bring it back on the 22nd in a much more formal, detailed form. It's typically about 35, 40 pages by department, just like you've seen from me over the past many years. And then at that point, again, like if the board wants to increase consultants or decrease something else, or whatever, get that feedback and then bring that back on the 22nd. If the board can't come to that consensus today, then I guess I would ask that we look at possibly scheduling a follow-up.
Okay, second question, and thank you for that answer. In last year's budget, there was a Schedule 1, which were employee changes. Will there be any employee changes this year? Maybe that's an Abby question.
Abby, you want to take a stab first?
Sure, I'm happy to. So as far as changes go, there will actually, just as far as FTE, full-time equivalent, we are proposing a budget with one less FTE. So we are proposing going from 83 FTE to 82 FTE. There are, the majority of the changes would be within the operations department, shifting a couple of utility workers, a couple of FTE from one division to another based on operational changes and responsibility shifting. If you want more detail on that at this meeting, probably Don Perkins could enlighten the board on those changes. Would you like that today, Barbara?
Well, yeah, I think that would be good. I mean, we can check our fatigue factor, our Zoom fatigue factor with the board, but you know, each board member, we think a lot about the what the consultants provide. They provide expertise. They do actually offset, but contribute to labor costs, but in a different way. Okay. But we also, in my opinion, you know, with the current administration direction, this gets back to Director Ringen, our national legislative advocacy folks are looking at where that money is. And when I look at disadvantaged communities like Tuolumne County is, we just do not have shovel-ready projects because they have an expiration date and they're very, very costly if they expire. That's work that never was realized or implemented. And so in a way, when I think of looking at our workforce, our FTEs, it would be, I would love to have a more robust discussion about a cadre of, let's say, grant folks, okay, that one person, it's real tough to sequentially write grants when there's a bunch of due dates. I mean, and this is just for a future conversation, but where we need to go and how we need to leverage our money, and based on what Steve was saying in terms of alternatives, I would really want to encourage us to actually look at the positions, the diversity of each position, the retooling, and many communities are starting to do this, and look at an internal force of grant writers that can then tag team with external consultants and do a bunch when the time is right to move. You know, grants just don't come in slowly. And I've just noticed as a grant nut, a lot of money is just not being captured because we just do not have the capacity in that regard to leverage our ratepayers' dollars with grants. So I just want to say larger retooling, and yes, I'd love Don to comment on this, but I think I just want to have us hold that opportunity as an alternative, because I do think it's underutilized, given the direction the state's going and the feds are going, and we can avail ourselves if we had maybe a team, something to think about.
We have Director Kearns and then Director Ringen for questions.
Actually, it's more of a statement towards the general public, because I do get a lot of comments from friends and other people that I run into regarding the money that we spend on consultants and legal costs and whatnot. And just like Steve said, I totally agree, Steve. It goes up and down with what's going on at TUD and or any organization. And I'm usually, certainly before I got on this board, I'm certainly one of those people that say, my God, what the heck's all this consultant cost for? However, that being said, this organization is in a situation right now where we need a lot of that help right now. We do, for all the reasons stated that we've talked about already, PG&E, the Maloney's, and everything else that we've got going on. So that's, I think that just needed to be restated again. Steve covered that as well, but I wanted to make sure that all those of you that are out there who have contacted me on this and stopped me on the street, that I wanted you to know that for now, at least, a lot of that consultant and legal work is paying off and doing us a lot of good, and will pay off in the long run. So that's it. Thank you.
Director Ringen.
Okay, thank you. So I just want to say that I totally agree with President Balin and her idea of having a conversation and see if we can't find, put together some sort of plan for in-house grant finding and writing. And I'd like to add to that, I think part of the discussion would be that that group, that person, however, whatever the board ends up and staff come up with, that they be well-versed on CEQA and NEPA, because that is always part of the grant process. And if we're able to do that in-house, that would be phenomenal, because I know over the years that I've been on the board or out in the public, in the chair, watching the board, I can't tell you how many times that President Balin has presented grant opportunities to the GMs, and it never goes any further. It dies, and that's got to end. If the money's out there, then we need to have a method to go after it, because we just got through hearing from our finance director, and you can see that more money is going to be a whole bunch better than less money. So we ought to figure that out. Thank you.
Steve Sheffield?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up before Don chimes in here to Barbara's comment, really for the benefit of Director Murphy. And I'm sure you've looked at our existing budget, but in our budget, we typically have, Barbara referred to it, a Schedule 1 listing the positions. I told you before, labor's $12.5 million. How the heck do we get to that? Well, we literally go by each department, each full-time position, and that. And so that Schedule 1 does just that. It lists out every department, lists out all 83 of those. And there's a column for fiscal year 21 and a column for fiscal year 22. You know, many times we get asked, is TUD adding positions, getting rid of positions, whatever. Well, like Abby said, the projected budget at this point goes from 83 to 82. And there are, you know, a handful where there's some, you know, possibly a title change or a reclassification, depending on, you know, if we don't fill a position or we're doing something. Some of this was part of the MOU, some of this is part of operational, and each department contributed to this, you know, whether or not, you know, we're looking at a GIS person versus an engineering associate engineer, whether we're looking at a customer service representative, whether we're looking at, you know, a utility worker or a meter technician. So a lot of this is kind of cleanup, I know, on there, and I know titles are important and do that, but, you know, that's part of what this is. But really, you'll see when we get the draft of this, that schedule, and then Dawn can hit on some of the key ones. You know, if you compare 21 to 22, you're going to see like a 1 in one column and a 0 in the next. And then you go right above that, and you say, oh, they got added as an engineering technician 2 rather than an inspector or something of that sort. But anyway, I wanted to provide that context for the board.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to try to be brief but clear as best I can. I'm not looking at the draft schedule, Director Balin, that you're referring to, but this is a natural process for this district and management to do on an annual basis, regular basis, to reevaluate, you know, all of the departments and make or suggest to make changes where necessary, because the district is always changing. And as of late, in my estimation, changing for the good. We've done some great work in the last 3 years to greatly improve our operations. So conversely, if that's the right word to use there, operation staffing needs to change to meet the new TUD. So, so what I'm trying to say here is we can see that on the horizon, there's going to be reduction in water treatment plants. Therefore, there naturally should be a reduction in the need for water treatment plant operators. So that would be one reason for reducing the numbers. On the other hand, there are, besides water treatment responsibility, there's a massive amounts of distribution responsibility. And for TUD, for whatever reason, traditionally, a fair amount of the distribution responsibilities fell on the shoulders of water treatment plant operators rather than distribution operators. One of those goals that I had in the back of my mind for many, many years, more than a decade, to try to someday solve that, fix that if it can be fixed. Well, lo and behold, you know, we have a team of seasoned superintendents and staff that understand that goal and how that will add to efficiencies and cost savings for the district. So that's that. And then lastly, you know, our construction and maintenance crews have demonstrated here in the very recent future, the Willow Springs distribution improvements is just one prime example of the fine work that they did for this district and the community at a major cost savings. And those examples of Willow Springs are endless, almost endless. You can say the same thing in Cedar Ridge, Brentwood, Scenic View, Scenic Brook area. So there's many of those examples. So I felt the need to reallocate some of those resources that were in water treatment to other departments to bolster their efforts, all to add to safety. I mean, cost savings. I hope that was clear. Go ahead, Barbara.
Thank you. So, and sort of, thank you, Don, for always looking at us retooling and you know, and also getting the new training that folks need as they shift around and et cetera. But, you know, it's anticipated that we're going to get 1.5 FTE for hydro, I believe, in anticipation of an expanded revenue portfolio. With our expanded water portfolio, we will be adding hopefully more revenue, and which would be more labor as well. So again, I think it's really great that we take this opportunity to take a look at. I personally think it's probably one for hydro and recreation responsibilities that we'll be taking on with various relicensing and PG&E acquisition. So I'm just glad that you're thinking about reduction and shifting. Sometimes you can't reduce, but you can definitely shift around. We also have just the last thing, and then I'll turn the mic over. Or mute myself, and that is our baseline crews went away. And is there a way to be able to, I mean, that's a CAL FIRE or CDF, you know, crew buggy, 300, 400 for the captain, right? And then the inmates, the minimum security, which have a really high safety record, et cetera. So, you know, we need to be thinking about that. Could there be community volunteers? Could there be an opportunity to educate and get people certified and part of some volunteer folks that could augment that, what the inmates did, you know, things of that nature too. So at any rate, I know you guys are thinking about it. What better group to think about what you need than the ones that say, hey, I need this, you know, so I don't want to micromanage, but just, yeah, we're going to be opening this up again to more, two more revenue streams, which is going to require more FTEs as well.
Thank you, Barbara, for all those comments and reminding me. Yes, the raw water division, with respect to how it's going to look with the acquisition of PG&E, definitely have to change. We've got to be sensitive and careful and really thinking clearly about that, and that's to come. And yes, you mentioned, I just can't help it, but you mentioned losing baseline was costly. It was just costly, but again, you have this team here that none of the superintendents or any of the departments are really solely focused on just their stuff. We all have an understanding that the district's overall needs of the day are important, and you won't be surprised, but you should be proud of the fact that each department, when they need to, can lend a hand to another department, such as the Algerine ditch, where we used to use baseline a lot, and go teamwork and go knock that project out. So anyway, thank you for bringing those up. And I definitely don't feel like you're micromanaging.
Abby Parkon.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, this is all really good discussion, and some things that Steve said and some things that Don said spurred more ideas in my mind that I wanted to share with the board just to follow through with some of their thoughts. So thank you both for that. So as the board has seen in the past, and certainly with the budget process, with any vacancies that we have or in the budget process, we take a very, very hard look at our staffing levels. We look at our staffing levels, we look at within each division, within each department, we look at any technology improvements that we've made, we look at consultants or contractors that we've used, and we also look at for succession planning. So we look at the current needs of the next year's budget, the next year's projects, but also long range, short and midterm and long range goals, such as the PG&E acquisition. So there are some unknowns, but we also have some really good planning minds, especially among this group that you're looking at right now. I work extremely closely with each department head and superintendents in the operations side for what their current maybe challenges are and how we can make their jobs easier with respect to their staffing levels. So it's a lot of behind the scenes working and advising with all of those folks. We also work with the union rep a lot. So anytime we're looking at potentially making a change in a job description to make the job description meet the current responsibilities and to accurately reflect the jobs that we're doing out there as the times are changing, we float that by the union each and every time. And we get buy-in for them. We get some good dialogue, sometimes with the stewards, mostly with the union rep, because he floats that by his stewards. And so there's involvement from all sides so that we all understand what the goals are and what the intentions are with any changes that we make. And so what you'll see when you get the budget document is a reflection of all of that work that we've been doing coming up to this moment. And so once you have it in front of you, we can certainly go, line by line if it's needed to see where the changes are and how they're reflected. But it's a team effort, and we take this job very seriously because we want to make sure that if we are staffing up in certain areas, that we have the work for those areas. We have, by lowering the FTE by 1, it is a vacant position currently. So everyone is currently working at TUD, will be continuing to work at TUD. We have a few vacancies that we're working through that we want to get fully staffed up, but it's been great. It's always great working with each and every department head to make sure that we can get the people in that they need. And certain things like grant writers and we've found that's really, really challenging to find. We're a mid-sized district. It seems like we're large up here, but we're fairly small in comparison to others in California. And sometimes we do struggle to recruit up here, because you have to really just love Tuolumne County and to come out here to want to live or relocate. And so we're constantly looking outside of TUD at what other districts are doing as well, both small and large, from PCWA down to Groveland or Twainhart. So those are kind of all of the tools and resources that we use when we build these budgets. Thank you.
Thank you, Abby. That I think that really helped educate the board. A quick question. When you do fly a new position, then do you then, are folks then within our organization, they apply for it as well as others apply for it? If you
Yes.
create a new position or you upgrade a position?
Correct. So
Okay.
any
That's how that
positions,
works.
any recruitments that we do are always flown internally. And so sometimes they're flown internally first and then externally. Most of the time we fly concurrently, so internally and externally.
Okay,
Did that answer your question?
thank you. Yeah, and I'm sure the union weighs in on all that too. So yeah.
Yes, there's a
Thank you. Any other questions? I'm sorry.
there's a specific article in the MOU that that procedurally we follow to make sure that we're flying all of the positions according to the MOU and our personnel policies.
Thank you. Any
Steve
further?
Sheffield?
So
I'm sorry.
just a final comment. I know it's been a whole lot. I'm so appreciative to the board for your patience. I hope today was informative and helped you. You know, we've been working on this nonstop since March. We take it very, very seriously in the interest of our customers as well as the interest of the board and all the employees. But, you know, I couldn't do it without operations, engineering, admin, as well as my finance staff. It's really a team effort. I think this is a workable start. But, you know, don't hesitate to call me with any specific questions. But more importantly, I just wanted to tell the four of you, thank you.
Thank you. And again, I just asking the board to follow up with Steve, and we'll be prepared to approve the budget. And again, I just want to make us all aware that we would be adopting a 2 million deficit. Is that right? I just want to make sure that we all understand what we're looking at. You know, it's common, and that's not an outrageous sum.
Yeah, you know, again, for purposes of context, it's consistent with what we did with last year's budget. I would argue that it's not a true deficit because it does include CIP. And so as we know, CIPs, we're going to be looking for grants, looking for anything that, and invariably we have a permit delay or something else. But yes, your summary is correct with that context, Barbara.
Any further comments before I open it up to the public for comment? Hey,
There's no
Michaela,
public comment.
There's no public comment. See, everybody did a great job. All right. Well, gosh, I guess if there's no further business on these issues, again, I want to say thank you for a great job that you guys did and rolling over. I think this is a very useful document. And if you guys haven't really been familiar with it, and I don't know if Director Murphy has a copy of this, but it's really thorough, and it'll be even more meaningful if we code those, you know, green light, orange light, or, you know, if something's been postponed and it's a red light. So good comments there. So with that, if there's no further input for the good of the order, I will adjourn today's special board meeting of the June 3rd.
Thank you,
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Thank you,
Have
guys.
a good rest of the afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.